Left-leaning politician Kumara Dissanayake has been elected as Sri Lanka's next president after he won the country's first election since its economy collapsed in 2022. The 55-year-old beat off his nearest rival, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, to emerge as the clear winner after a historic second round of counting, which included second preference votes. Outgoing President Ranil Wickremesinghe trailed in third. Dissanayake polled 5.6 million or 42.3% of the votes, a massive boost to the 3% he had managed in the last presidential election in 2019. It was the first time in the Indian Ocean Islands history that the presidential race was decided by a second tally of votes after the top two candidates failed to win the mandatory 50% of the votes to be declared winner.
There was a need for a government with a mandate from the people if you want to rescue the country from the crisis. We know in the recent past the mandate was distorted. The distortion of the people's mandate affected the parliament and other institutions beyond that. The people's mandate that is needed to take this country forward is being established. That was the main point of the presidential election. And I think the general election should be held immediately after.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended greetings to Sri Lankan President-designate Kumara Dissanayake and congratulated him following his win in the Sri Lankan presidential election. Taking to social media platform X, Prime Minister Modi congratulated Dissanayake and said that the island country holds a special place in India's neighbourhood-first policy and vision. Sagar, that is security and growth for all in the region, which focuses on concerted, cooperative measures for sustainable use of oceans and provides a framework for a safe, secure and stable maritime domain in the region. Prime Minister Modi said that he looks forward to working closely with Sri Lankan President-elect to further strengthen multifaceted cooperation between the two nations for the benefit of the people and the entire region. High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Santosh Jha, called on President-elect Kumara Dissanayake on Sunday. He conveyed the greetings from India's leadership and congratulated him on winning the people's mandate. India, as Sri Lanka's civilizational twin, is committed to further deepen ties for the prosperity of the people of our two countries. Dr. Ahmed Muin Farooqi joins us from Colombo. Ahmed, good morning. Now, Sri Lanka readies to get its first left president. Get us the factors which worked in his favor. A 42.3 voter turnout, voter percent of the votes were polled in his favor. This is a massive margin with regard to the 3% he got in 2019. Get us more. What were the factors that worked in his favor?
Preeti, actually, you see, this was a very, very important election for Sri Lanka, especially after the 2022 economic downturn. Given that, there were several firsts in this election. First of all, if we talk about the political landscape, with the complete obliteration of UNP in the previous elections, general elections, as well as the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, there's a complete change in the landscape. That is one. Secondly, people had been feeling a desire for change was existing. There was a lot of anger, there was angst, and there was disgust with regard to the kind of policies that were taken by the previous so-called corrupt regimes, and also by the interim president or the president was appointed in 2022, Ranil Wickremesinghe as well. So there was some amount of feeling that there needs to be a system change, and this is where Kumara Dissanayake had come forward, talking about a radical change in the entire system, at the same time talking about addressing the corruption-related issues in the current government. Given all these scenarios, somehow there had been certain obstacles in the form that, traditionally speaking, in Sri Lankan presidential elections, it's a straight fight between two candidates. This time around, it appeared to have been a three-cornered fight with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa as well as incumbent President Ranil Wickremesinghe also in the race. But despite all that, the NPP leader has managed to pull through and secured a victory, which is something which is historic in Sri Lanka's history.
All right, Ahmed, now that, the President-designate Dissanayake has talked of his priorities of bringing back the country to normalcy, help us understand how challenging is this task?
First of all, Preeti, it's a very, very difficult task as of now. Primarily speaking, within 2 years, somehow the island has some sense of stability. Although the island is not yet completely out of the woods, the debt still exists. GDP is still not yet to the level that the Sri Lankan economy should be as per the desires of the government. However, the new government has several issues that are immediately before it. First of which is that their numbers are only 3 in the parliament. And this is where they would feel like there's an urgent need for going for general elections. And this is what Mr. Dissanayake also spoke yesterday, that there's an urgent need that the entire island should go ahead with general elections so that people's mandate could be reflected in the parliament as well. Apart from that, the new government will have challenges with regard to creation of more jobs, ramping up revenues, while at the same time maintaining the promises of reducing several of the tax rates. And this is something which the new government has to find a balance whereby they would look forward to newer ways of finding revenues while not hampering people, especially their cost of living. And this is one of the most important challenges.
All right. Also, the Indian Prime Minister has congratulated President-elect Dissanayake. Help us understand how do we see the relationship between India and Sri Lanka, given the change of guard in Sri Lanka?
Preeti, India and Sri Lanka have been having fantastic relations over the last several years. Ever since India's neighborhood first policy started taking shape, we have seen the India-Sri Lanka bilateral relations grow from strength to strength. Especially so over the last 2.5 to 3 years, we have seen a huge amount of interest in the entire region. Further to this, I would like to also add here that India had come to the assistance of Sri Lanka at the peak of the economic downturn in 2022 with a huge assistance of 4.5 billion US dollars. That assistance was much more than what the IMF assistance has been provided for, which will be available for the next 3 years also. So India's assistance was much bigger. Secondly, India was the first country to come forward with the financing assurances to obtain the IMF deal. Now, given all these circumstances and all these developments, India's position in Sri Lanka has been very good. There has been a lot of goodwill that has been generated, and India commands a very good respect in terms of the entire political landscape in Sri Lanka. Now, what is expected is that even the new guard will be able to work well with India in terms of its foreign policy, because India has been doing fantastically well. And if I can recall, Mr. Dissanayake had earlier visited India during one of his visits, which was a fruitful one in which he got to see various models which India has been working, including the Amul model. And given all these circumstances, it is expected that India and Sri Lanka will continue to be a very good bilateral relations. I would also like to add here that India's High Commissioner, Mr. Santosh Jha, was the first resident diplomat who is in Sri Lanka to have actually gone and visited the President-elect and conveyed his congratulations to him. So there are lots of possibilities for continue in the same kind of bilateral relations, and an upward take is something which is expected from him.
All right, Ahmed, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details.